At my grandson's birthday, my seat vanished as if I didn't exist. My daughter-in-law shrugged, everyone laughed, and no one stood up for me. I quietly left, canceling every check I had paid, feeling the sting of being invisible on the day I thought mattered most. Can you imagine showing up to your grandson's birthday party, a party you'd poured your heart and your savings into, only to find there's no seat for you at the family table? That day, I learned my own son and his wife saw me as nothing more than their personal ATM, and the worst part? My grandson saw me too, just as an afterthought that I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked into that backyard. The decorations were perfect. Blue and silver balloons, a superhero cake that probably cost more than most people's groceries for a month. Everything screamed expensive, which didn't surprise me because I'd been the one writing the checks for months, for years. But as I approached the main table, the one for the family, my steps slowed. I counted the chairs once, then twice. 7 people. 6 chairs. My heart just stopped. Grandma Harriet, my sweet 8-year-old grandson Byron, came running up in his pristine Spider-Man costume. Another thing I'd paid for. I hugged him tight, trying to breathe past the lump in my throat. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered. "Are you having a good party?" "The best," he beamed, oblivious. "Did you see the bounce house? And Mom got a magician coming later." Of course she did. Nova never did anything halfway, especially when someone else was footing the bill. Then Nova, my daughter-in-law, glided over, her voice honey-sweet. "Harriet, you made it! We're so glad you're here." She was in that designer dress I'd helped pay off last month, her smile perfect, practiced. I gestured to the table. "Where should I sit?" For just a split second, I swear I saw it flicker across her face, satisfaction. Then, she gasped, pressing a manicured hand to her chest. "Oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. We must have miscounted when we set up." Miscounted, as if I was some last-minute addition, an afterthought they'd forgotten to plan for. My chest tightened, but I forced a polite smile. "It's fine. I can grab a chair from—" No, don't be silly," she waved her hand dismissively. "There are plenty of seats at the other tables. You'll be more comfortable there anyway, closer to the bar." She laughed, and a few adults chuckled along. Then David, my son, appeared, his arms sliding around Nova's waist. He looked at the table, then at me. I waited for him to say something, anything, to defend his mother. Instead, he just offered a weak, apologetic smile. "Sorry, Mom. You know how party planning gets crazy. Nova's been so stressed trying to make everything perfect for Byron. Stressed. Planning a party with my money had stressed her." I stood there, feeling like I was in a slow-motion nightmare. Guests arrived, parents I didn't know, dropping off children who would eat cake I'd paid for, while the birthday boy's grandmother was relegated to a table with strangers. "Of course," I said quietly. "I understand." But I didn't understand. Not really. What I understood was that this wasn't an accident. The chairs had been counted, 6 for the people who mattered, none for the woman who made it all possible. I made my way to a smaller table, my purse heavy, my heart heavier. From there I watched them. Nova, holding court, laughing, David completely absorbed in her performance. Byron, happy and oblivious, the little prince of this carefully orchestrated kingdom. And I sat alone, watching from the outside. My phone felt like a brick. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened my banking app. The automatic transfers glowed on the screen like accusations. Mortgage, car payments, Byron's tuition, Nova's credit card. Payment after payment. Month after month. Year after year. All this time, I thought I was helping. I thought I was being a good mother, a good grandmother. I thought my money was buying me a place in this family. Instead, it had bought me invisibility. I sat through the magic show, through the cake cutting, through the endless happy birthday. When the party finally wound down, Byron hugged me tight. "Thank you for my present, Grandma. I love the Lego set." "You're welcome, baby," I whispered, kissing the top of his head. Then I looked up. Nova was watching us. "Thanks for coming, Harriet," she said, her voice perfectly cordial. "I'm sorry about the seating mix-up." Mix-up, the word tasted like ash. I drove home in silence, every moment replaying. By the time I pulled into my driveway, a strange calm had settled over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was done. Inside, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open. Transfer after transfer, payment after payment. Thousands of dollars flowing out every month to support a family that couldn't be bothered to save me a chair. I started with the mortgage. Cancelled. Then the car payments. Cancelled. One by one, I methodically deleted every automatic transfer, every recurring payment, every financial tie that bound me to people who saw me as nothing more than an open checkbook. When I was finished, I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, they would start to understand exactly what my love and support had been worth. And for the first time in years, I smiled. 3 days passed before the first call came. I was watering my tomatoes. They at least appreciated my care when David's name popped up. I let it go to voicemail. The calls kept coming. David, Nova, even Byron's school. I ignored them all. Instead, I spent the evening with a bottle of wine and a calculator, adding up something I should have done years ago, how much my family love had cost me. The numbers were staggering. It started small, the way these things always do. 15 years ago, David and Nova were young, struggling. Just help with the wedding, David had said. Just the deposit on the house. Just until we get on our feet. 15 years later, they were still on my feet. The mortgage payment, $2,347 a month for 8 years. Nova's luxury SUV, $651 a month. David's truck, $492. Byron's private school tuition, $200 a month. Utilities, insurance, groceries. Nova would text me photos of receipts, always with an excuse, usually $800 to $1,000 a month. Her credit card payments, $500 a month minimum on balances that never seemed to shrink because she kept spending. Family vacations to Disney World, beach house rentals, weekend getaways, another $5,800 a month averaged over the year. Medical expenses, clothing, home repairs, renovations, it was endless. When I finally reached the bottom of my calculations, I stared at the number until my eyes watered. Over the past 5 years alone, I had given them $387,000. Nearly $400,000 of my late husband's life insurance, my savings, my retirement fund. For what? To sit alone at a stranger's table while they laughed with their friends? I poured another glass of wine. The really bitter part was how they'd made me complicit in my own exploitation. Nova was brilliant at making her requests sound like favors to me. I know how much you love spoiling Byron, she'd purr, hinting at some expensive toy. Or, I saw this dress that would be perfect for Byron's school play, but it's a little out of our budget right now. You probably think I'm silly for caring so much about how I look, but I want Byron to be proud of his mom. She made me feel like the generous grandmother, the woman who loved to help. What I really was, I now realized, was an ATM with feelings. David had been just as manipulative, but in a different way. He played the struggling son card. I hate asking Mom, he'd sigh. But Byron's counting on this vacation, and Nova's been working so hard. As if I were the solution to problems they created. And I bought into it all. Every payment had felt like love, like I was taking care of my family. I'd even felt proud when Nova posted photos of their beautiful home, their happy family, their perfect life. Look what love can build, I'd think. What I'd built was a prison of my own generosity. My phone buzzed again. David. This time I answered. Mom, what the hell is going on? The mortgage payment bounced, and Nova's car got repossessed this morning. His voice was frantic, angry, accusing. Not worried about me, just angry that the money had stopped. Hello, David. I said calmly. How are you? How am I? Mom, we're in crisis mode here. The bank called about the mortgage. The school wants Byron's tuition, and Nova's crying because they took her car right out of the grocery store parking lot. What happened to the transfers? I took a sip of wine. I canceled them. Silence. You canceled them? What do you mean you canceled them? I mean, I went into my bank account and stopped all the automatic payments. It's quite simple, really. But you can't just do that. We depend on that money. And there it was. The truth he'd never said out loud. I know you do, I said quietly. That's the problem. Mom, look, if this is about the seating thing at Byron's party, Nova explained that was just a mistake. She feels terrible about it. A mistake, even now. He was lying to protect her. Or maybe he'd actually convinced himself it was true. This isn't about one party, David. This is about the fact that you've both become so comfortable taking my money that you've forgotten I'm a person, not a bank account. That's not fair, Mom. We appreciate everything you do. Do you? I interrupted. Because from where I sit, I'm only valuable when I'm useful. When did you last call me just to see how I was doing? When did you last invite me over for dinner that you paid for? When did you last treat me like your mother instead of your financial advisor? He was quiet for a long moment. Mom, you're being dramatic. We love you, you know that. But you can't just cut us off like this. We have obligations, responsibilities. So do I said. And my first responsibility is to myself. I hung up before he could respond. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with texts. Nova had joined the conversation, and her messages were less diplomatic. Harriet, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is cruel and unfair. Byron is going to suffer because of your selfishness. We never asked you to help us, you offered. You can't just change your mind and destroy our lives. I'm calling your doctor. This isn't normal behavior. You're not thinking clearly. I read each message with growing amazement. In Nova's mind, I was the unreasonable one. I was the cruel one. After years of taking my money and treating me like a second-class family member, she genuinely believed she was the victim here. But it was her last message that made me laugh out loud. What are we supposed to tell Byron when we have to take him out of his school and sell the house? What were they supposed to tell Byron? Maybe they could start with the truth. That they'd lived beyond their means for years, funded by a grandmother they'd taken for granted until the money dried up. Or maybe they could tell him that actions have consequences, and that treating people badly eventually catches up with you. As I got ready for bed that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time in decades, I wasn't worried about anyone else's problems, anyone else's needs, anyone else's crisis. Tomorrow I knew they'd escalate. Nova would probably show up at my door. David would keep calling. They'd try guilt, anger, manipulation. Every tool they'd used successfully for years. But I wasn't the same woman who'd left Byron's party 3 days ago. That woman had been desperate to belong, willing to pay any price for a place in her family. This woman had learned the difference between being loved and being used. And she was never going back. Nova arrived at my door exactly 1 week later. I watched through my living room window as she stepped out of a taxi. Apparently, she hadn't managed to get another car yet. She was dressed for battle. A black dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back to scream, struggling mother. I let her knock 3 times before I answered. When I opened the door, her face immediately crumpled into what I recognized as her performance tears. Harriet, thank God you're home. We need to talk. I didn't invite her in. Instead, I stepped out onto my front porch, crossing my arms. What can I do for you, Nova? The question threw her off balance. She'd expected sympathy. What can I do for me? She repeated, her voice rising. Harriet, you're destroying our family. Byron cried himself to sleep last night because we had to tell him he might have to change schools. Is that what you wanted? To hurt an innocent child? There it was, the Byron card. She'd always known exactly which buttons to push, and my grandson had always been her most effective weapon. What I want, I said calmly, is for you and David to take responsibility for your own lives. Her face flushed red. Responsibility? We've been working our asses off trying to build a life for our son. You think this has been easy for us? Asking for help? You think we enjoyed having to depend on you? The lie was so brazen it took my breath away. You enjoyed it enough to do it for 15 years. We didn't have a choice, she screamed. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, paused while getting her mail, clearly listening. Nova noticed, too, and lowered her voice, but the venom remained. David's business has been struggling. I've been working part-time. We've been doing our best with what we have. And what you have, I said quietly, has always included my money. So much, so that you forgot it wasn't actually yours. Nova's mask finally slipped. You offered. Every single time you offered. You said you wanted to help. You said you loved taking care of your family. Don't act like we forced you. She was right. Of course I had offered. But what she conveniently forgot was how those offers had come about. The hints, the sighs, the carefully crafted stories about Byron's disappointments or their struggles. The way she'd made me feel selfish if I didn't immediately solve their problems with my checkbook. You're right, I said. And for a moment, she looked relieved. I did offer. And now I'm unoffering. Her face went white. You can't do this to us. We have obligations, contracts. The mortgage company doesn't care about your hurt feelings, Harriet. They want their money. Then you'd better figure out how to give it to them. With what? She shrieked, abandoning all pretense of control. David's barely making enough to cover groceries, and my job pays peanuts. You know our situation. You've always known our situation. And there was the crux of it. I had always known their situation, which was that they'd built a lifestyle they couldn't afford and expected me to fund it indefinitely. They'd never even tried to live within their means, because they'd never had to. Maybe you should get a better job, I suggested. Maybe David should expand his business or find additional work. Maybe you should move to a house you can actually afford. Nova stared at me like I'd suggested they move to Mars. We can't just uproot Byron. His whole life is here. And David can't just magically make more money appear. But I can. I asked. Is that it, Nova? David can't make more money, but Grandma Harriet can just keep writing checks forever. That's different. You're retired. You don't have the same pressures we do. Your house is paid off. You don't have a child to think about. I have a grandson to think about, I interrupted. And what I think about is what kind of man he's going to become if he grows up watching his parents take advantage of an elderly woman and call it love. The words hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she was speechless. Then the tears started again, but these looked real. How can you say that? We love you, Harriet. Byron adores you. You're his grandmother. And yet you didn't save me a seat at his birthday party. She flinched. That was a mistake. I told you we miscounted. Stop. My voice was sharper than I'd intended. Stop lying to me, Nova. Stop lying to yourself. You didn't miscount anything. You deliberately excluded me because you've gotten so comfortable seeing me as a wallet that you forgot I'm a person. We stared at each other across the chasm that had opened between us. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what approach might work. The tears weren't effective. Anger had backfired. Guilt wasn't landing. What was left? Fine, she said finally, her voice cold. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. You cut us off and you'll lose Byron. You'll lose your son. You'll lose your whole family, Harriet. Is your pride really worth more than that? The threat hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. She was betting that my love for Byron would override everything else, that I'd cave rather than risk losing access to my grandson. 6 months ago, she would have been right. If loving Byron means funding your lifestyle, I said quietly, then maybe I need to love him from a distance until he's old enough to understand the difference. Nova's mouth fell open. She played her ace, and I called her bluff. You're going to regret this, she said, backing toward the taxi. You're going to regret this so much. When you're sitting alone in this house with no family, no grandson, no one who cares about you, remember that you chose this. I watched her get into the taxi and drive away, my heart hammering against my ribs. Her threat wasn't empty. She absolutely would try to keep Byron away from me. David would go along with it, because he always went along with whatever Nova wanted. But as I stood there on my porch, something unexpected happened. Instead of the crushing fear I'd expected, I felt relief. Nova had finally shown me who she really was, and who David had chosen to become by extension. They weren't my family. They were people who'd been using me. And when I stopped being useful, they'd shown their true colors immediately. Real family doesn't threaten you with exile for setting boundaries. Real family doesn't punish you for refusing to bankrupt yourself for their comfort. That evening, David called. His voice was tired, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. Mom, please. Nova told me about your conversation today. She's really upset. I imagine she is. Look, I know things got heated, but we need to work this out for Byron's sake, if nothing else. What exactly do you want to work out, David? I want my family back together. I want you to be part of Byron's life. I want us to find a way forward. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe David was different. What does that look like to you? I asked carefully. Well, obviously we can't just go back to the way things were, but maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. Maybe you could help with just the essential things, the mortgage, Byron's school. We could cut back on everything else. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. Even now, even after everything, he was still asking for my money. A reduced amount, maybe, but still asking. David, I said softly, do you understand what happened at Byron's party? It was a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't. Your wife deliberately humiliated me in front of a room full of people, and you stood there and let her do it. After 15 years of paying for your life, I wasn't even worth a chair at the family table. Silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have said something. I should have defended you. Yes, I said. You should have, but you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your priorities. But we can fix this. We can make it right with my money. Mom, that's not... He stopped, catching himself. It's not just about the money, is it? Because every solution you've proposed involves me continuing to pay for your lifestyle. I could hear Nova in the background, her voice sharp and urgent. I have to go, David said abruptly. But, Mom, please think about what you're doing. Please think about Byron. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone, and realized something that should have terrified me, but somehow didn't. I might never see my grandson again. But I also realized something else. I'd rather lose a family that only valued me for my money than keep paying for the privilege of being treated like garbage. For the first time in 15 years, I was free. And freedom, it turned out, was worth more than all the money I'd ever given them. The silence started immediately. Not the peaceful kind of silence I'd been craving, but the deliberate, punishing kind that felt like being erased from existence. My phone, which used to buzz constantly with requests and demands, went completely quiet. No good morning texts from David. No photos of Byron from Nova. Nothing. I told myself this was what I wanted. I'd bought my freedom, and silence was the price. But as the days stretched into weeks, the quiet began to feel less like peace and more like punishment. 2 weeks after Nova's visit, I ran into Janet Morrison, Byron's former babysitter, at the grocery store. "Mrs. Holloway," she called out from the cereal aisle. "How's little Byron doing?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How is Byron? I had no idea. He's doing well, I managed. Janet's face lit up. "Oh, I heard about the school situation. That must be so hard on all of you, but at least you'll get to see more of him now, right? Silver lining and all that." My blood ran cold. School situation? Oh, having to transfer to public school. Nova mentioned it when she called to see if I could help with after-school care. She said it was just temporary while you all figured things out financially. Janet's expression shifted as she registered my confusion. Oh no, you didn't know. I fled to my car, hands shaking. They'd really done it. They'd taken Byron out of his school, the school I'd been paying for, the school he loved. And I was learning about it from a teenager in the cereal aisle. That evening, I drove by their house. What I saw made my chest tight with grief. The for sale sign was bad enough, but it was the details that broke my heart. Nova's flower boxes, once overflowing, were brown and dead. The lawn, usually maintained by a service I paid for, was overgrown. David's truck wasn't in the driveway, probably repossessed like Nova's car. But worst of all was Byron. I could see him through the living room window, sitting alone on the floor in front of the television. The room looked wrong, emptier. They must have sold furniture. I sat in my car, watching his small figure, feeling like the worst person in the world. This was my fault. I'd done this to him. My phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Nova had posted a photo of Byron at what looked like a school carnival. He was smiling, but it was a forced smile. The caption made my stomach churn. Byron being brave at his new school's fall festival. Some changes are hard, but we're grateful for the fresh start and the people who truly care about our family. Bless new beginnings. #RealFamily. The implication was clear. I was the conditional one. I was the one who'd abandoned them. In Nova's version, I was the villain. I scrolled through more posts, each one a carefully crafted narrative of their hardship. Photos of Byron helping to pack boxes. Nova in a diner uniform, a new job. David, looking thinner and more tired, but working, building a deck, painting a house. Part of me felt proud of them for finally taking responsibility, but a larger part felt sick watching how they turned their newfound work ethic into a martyrdom narrative, with me cast as the cruel grandmother. The worst part was Byron. He looked smaller, quieter. I wanted to call him, to tell him Grandma missed him, loved him. But Nova had made it clear contact would only happen on her terms, and her terms seemed to be never. Then came the true gut punch. 4 months into this terrible silence, my phone rang. It was Marie Hricks, Nova's former best friend. I hadn't spoken to Marie in 2 years, not since they had a falling out. "Harriet, it's Marie. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I think there's something you need to know." We met at a coffee shop, somewhere neutral. Marie looked tired, in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. She got straight to the point. "I heard about what happened with you and Nova about the money. She's been telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you became paranoid and started imagining slights that weren't there." Marie wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "But I know that's not true. Because I know what she really thought about you." My heart started beating faster, a frantic drum in my chest. "What do you mean?" Marie took a deep breath. "Remember those monthly dinners we used to have? The girls' nights?" I nodded. "Nova used to talk about you a lot. Not the way a daughter-in-law should talk about her husband's mother." The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too crowded. "What did she say?" "She called you her personal ATM," Marie whispered. "She used to laugh about how easy it was to get money out of you. She'd plan out these elaborate stories about Byron needing something, or David's business struggling, and she'd practice her delivery on us." Each word hit me like a physical blow. Practice her delivery. She said the key was making you think you were being generous instead of being used. She'd talk about what buttons to push. Your guilt about not being around enough when David was little, your fear of missing out on Byron's childhood, your worry about being seen as stingy. I thought about all those conversations over the years, all those carefully worded requests that had made me feel like such a loving grandmother. "There's more," Marie said quietly. "She used to complain about having to include you in family events. She said David insisted on inviting you, but she wished you'd just send a check and stay home. The birthday party. It all made sense now. Nova hadn't forgotten to include me by accident. She'd been working up to excluding me for years. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Marie's eyes filled with tears. Because I was just as bad. I was jealous of how much help you gave them. My mother-in-law was nothing like you, and I used to think Nova was so lucky. I convinced myself she was just venting, that she didn't really mean it. What changed your mind? She tried to get me to lend them money. After you cut them off, she came to me with a sob story about your mental breakdown. She wanted $5,000 for Byron's school fees. Marie laughed bitterly. When I said I didn't have that kind of money, she suggested I could take out a credit card cash advance. That's when I realized she really would use anyone. I sat there, feeling sick and validated at the same time. Sick because the woman I treated like a daughter had been laughing at me behind my back for years. Validated because my instincts about the birthday party had been right. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate cruelty. There's something else, Marie said. About David. I braced myself. He knew. He knew about what Nova said, about how she really felt about you. He was there for most of those dinners. The last piece of my heart that had been holding out hope for my son crumbled. It was one thing to be weak, to be manipulated. It was another thing entirely to sit there while his wife mocked and plotted to exploit his own mother. He never said anything, I whispered. He laughed, Harriet. He thought it was funny how good Nova was at managing you. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, where I promptly threw up. When I came back, Marie was crying. I'm so sorry, she said. I should have told you years ago. I should have been a better friend. I sat down heavily, feeling like I'd aged a decade in an hour. Thank you for telling me now. Driving home, I wasn't thinking about whether David and Nova would learn anything. I was thinking about Byron, and whether he was learning the wrong lessons about family, about love, about what people owed each other. I pulled out the letter I'd written to Byron months earlier. I read it, then added a new paragraph. Your parents made choices, Byron, and so did I. I chose to stop letting them take advantage of me, even though I knew it would hurt you in the short term. I hope someday you'll understand that enabling someone isn't the same as loving them, and that the hardest thing about real love is sometimes knowing when to step back and let people face the consequences of their own decisions. I sealed it and put it back in my jewelry box. The silence continued, but it felt different now. Less like punishment, more like preparation. I was learning who I was when I wasn't defined by my usefulness to others. It was harder than I'd expected, but also more freeing than I'd dared to hope. 1 year later, I was in my kitchen making tea when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a thin boy with unruly brown hair, shifting nervously. It took me a moment to realize it was Byron. He'd grown at least 3 inches, and there was something different about his face. Less round, more serious. He looked like a child who'd learned things he shouldn't have had to learn yet. My hands shook as I opened the door. Byron. Hi, Grandma. His voice was quieter, more careful. Dad said I could come see you if I wanted to. I looked past him and saw David's truck parked at the curb. David sat behind the wheel, staring straight ahead. He didn't wave or acknowledge me, but he brought Byron. That had to mean something. Would you like to come in? I asked. He nodded, perching on the edge of the couch like he was ready to run. My heart broke a little at how uncertain he seemed. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay, the automatic response of a child who'd learned not to complain. I like my new school. It's smaller than my old one, but it's okay. And your mom and dad? Byron's expression shuddered slightly. They're okay, too. Dad works a lot now. Mom works at a restaurant. She's really tired all the time. I wanted to ask a million questions, but something about his careful answers warned me to go slow. Instead, I said, Are you hungry? I could make you a sandwich. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Do you still have those cookies? The ones with the chocolate chips. I'd actually baked a batch just last week, foolishly hoping he might somehow show up. In the kitchen, as I arranged cookies, Byron wandered around my house. He stopped in front of the refrigerator, where I used to display all his school pictures and artwork. You took them down, he said quietly. The photos. I'd packed them away months ago, because looking at them hurt too much. I thought you might not want me to have them anymore. Byron considered this, with the gravity of someone much older than 9. Can I see them? I retrieved the box from my closet and spread the pictures across the table. Byron studied them intently, picking up a drawing he'd made in 1st grade. Stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. I remember making this, he said. You put it on your refrigerator right away. It was beautiful. It still is. Byron set the drawing down and looked at me, directly for the first time. Mom says you stopped loving us. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat down across from him, choosing my response carefully. What do you think? I think, Byron paused, biting his lip. I think maybe you just got tired of being sad. The wisdom in his simple statement took my breath away. What makes you think I was sad? You always look sad at our house. Even when you were smiling, like when you gave me presents or came to my games, you looked happy, but also sad underneath. I had to swallow hard. You're very observant. Mom and Dad used to fight about you sometimes. After you left, Dad said Mom was mean to you, and Mom said you were mean first. But I don't think you're mean, Grandma. He looked at me again. What do you think? Byron picked up a cookie and took a small bite, organizing his thoughts. I think grown-ups make things too complicated. I missed you, but Mom said you didn't want to see me anymore because you were mad at her and Dad. That's not true, Byron. I wanted to see you every single day. Then why didn't you call me? The question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that his parents had used him as a weapon? Because I thought it might make things harder for you. Sometimes adults have to make decisions that don't feel good, but might be better in the long run. Byron nodded solemnly. Like when you made Dad get a real job? The comment caught me off guard. What do you mean? Dad works really hard now. He gets up early and comes home tired, but he's, I don't know, different, less worried all the time. And Mom, too. She complains about her job, but she seems prouder than before. I studied my grandson's face, seeing maturity there that hadn't existed a year ago. Are you proud of them? Yeah, Byron said without hesitation. It was scary at first when we had to move and change schools and everything, but now it feels more real, I guess. Like we're doing it ourselves instead of, he trailed off. Instead of what? Instead of pretending. The word hung in the air. This child had understood something that had taken me years to figure out. The life I'd been funding wasn't real. It was a performance, a beautiful illusion built on someone else's foundation. Byron, I said carefully, do you understand why I stopped helping with money? He nodded. Because they were being mean to you, and because they needed to learn how to take care of themselves. He looked up, a hint of worry in his eyes. Are you angry with me? Byron considered this seriously. I was at first. I missed my old room and my old school and having money for things I wanted. But then I realized I still had everything important. Like what? Like Mom and Dad and my friends. I made new ones, and books from the library instead of always buying new ones. He smiled shyly. And now I'm here with you. I reached across the table and took his small hand in mine. I missed you so much. I missed you too. That's why I asked Dad if I could come see you. You asked him? Last week. I told him I understood why you were upset, and that I wanted to see if you still loved me. The simple honesty of it brought tears to my eyes. What did he say? He said he'd been wanting to bring me for a while, but he was scared you'd be mad at him. Byron squeezed my hand. Are you mad at him? I looked out the window at David's truck, where my son sat waiting. I'm sad about some things that happened, but I love your dad and I love you. What about Mom? The harder question. I hope your mom is learning to be happy with the life she and your dad are building together. Byron seemed to accept this diplomatic non-answer. We spent the next hour looking through photo albums and talking about his new school, his new friends, his new life. He told me about helping his dad with work projects on weekends, about his mom teaching him to cook simple meals, about feeling proud when his teacher complimented his improved math skills. The boy who'd once had everything handed to him was discovering the satisfaction of earning things himself. When it was time to go, Byron hugged me tight. Can I come see you again? Anytime you want to, but you should ask your parents first. I will. He pulled back and looked at me seriously. Grandma, I think what you did was brave. What do you mean? You stopped pretending too. That's brave. As I watched David's truck pull away, Byron waving from the passenger window, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on everything going your way, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from living authentically. I'd lost a son and daughter-in-law who only valued me for my money. But I'd found myself again, and apparently, I hadn't lost my grandson after all. Byron had found his way back to me on his own terms, with his own understanding of what had happened. 6 months after Byron's first visit, he started coming over every other Saturday. David would drop him off and pick him up, and gradually those exchanges became less tense. We never discussed the past directly, but I could see in David's eyes a grudging respect for the choice I'd made. Nova never came with them, and I was fine with that. Some relationships can't be repaired, but Byron and I rebuilt ours slowly on a foundation of honesty instead of obligation. I taught him to garden and cook and manage money responsibly. He taught me that love doesn't require funding, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to discover their own strength. On my 70th birthday, Byron gave me a card he'd made himself. Inside, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for teaching me that real love doesn't cost anything." I kept that card next to the letter I'd written him during our separation. The letter I'd never had to give him because he'd figured out the truth all by himself. That night, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was free, but I wasn't isolated. I had learned the difference between being loved and being used. And I had chosen love, even when it meant losing people who couldn't tell the difference. The woman who'd sat silently at that birthday party, too afraid to demand the respect she deserved, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that you can't buy your way into a family that truly loves you. Because a family that truly loves you would never make you try. Call to action hearing Byron say that, after everything, was a moment I'll never forget. It made me wonder, what would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had to choose between your peace and a relationship that was costing you everything? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear from you.